$800 million for cancer research and development. And so let me begin by starting off saying thank you. And you all have some incredible stories, and I want to thank you for the courage that you displayed both in the work that unfortunately exposed you to some of the very things we're trying to cure. That takes courage all by itself. But also to thank you for being here to discuss some of the issues around active duty military and particularly first responders and what you're exposed to. John, this is I don't want to be too nice to you because I know I'll put you in your face if I am.
I appreciate that.
But all kidding aside, thank you for shining the spotlight on our incredible warriors. You've been amazing, John, and for all you've done for these 9/11 responders that are here represented today. You kind of threw yourself in front of the train, man, to make sure that people didn't walk away. And I really mean it. You had a profound impact on what happened in the Senate and the House, and I really mean it. I don't think we would have been able to get the kind of long-term funding we got were it not for your steadfastness. And I really mean that. I've been doing this job a long, long time. The only thing I know about more than most of you is how the Congress operates or doesn't operate, and it was it had a profound impact. And the main reason it mostly did, most every celebrity adopts a cause or whatever, but the thing that makes a gigantic difference is people can tell whether it's coming from the heart, whether it is really part of what you feel and taste and smell, and people get it. They understood how absolutely committed you were, your passion you brought to this, and so we owe you big time, buddy. Thank you, thank you. We tried like hell. We could not get it done until you just put everything you had in. And Stephanie, thank you for the support of the WWE. You consistently given to the military, entertaining our troops in combat zone. I've been in and out of Afghanistan and Iraq, I think 28, 29 times. And you know you've been there. It matters. It matters you showing up. These guys can tell you it matters. You know, they don't ask for a damn thing, but it's kind of nice. I know my son was there for a year in Iraq, in a war zone. It matters when people just show up and say, thank you. And that's what you guys did. No, I'm telling you, as the father of a decorated veteran, and these guys can tell you, it really matters. They're not looking for anything special, but just say, I recognize what you're doing. And I want to also say that these helping veterans get their first civilian job, your commitment to that matters too. One of the things I'm proudest of is Jill, my wife, and she and Michelle and their efforts in joining forces. You've been a great help to them. And it's made, as folks in uniform can tell you, it's made a lot of difference to their families. And so you continuing this effort matters as well. You know, the mission of the Cancer Moonshot, when the president asked me to head that up, was, you know, a lot of wise guys said, well, you know, Biden thinks we're going to cure cancer. There's no one cancer. There's over 200 distinct individual cancers. And we know we can cure some. We have already found a way to cure some. But we also know enormous progress in extending the life of people. Those of you who are docs know that how many times has a patient come to you and said, Doc, I don't expect you to make me whole again, but just give me another month so I can walk her down the aisle. Just give me another 6 weeks because it's my first grandchild. People aren't asking for the impossible. But every single solitary minute, every single solitary day and week matters. And the one thing about this Cancer Moonshot, when the president asked me to do this, we had two overarching priorities. One is, to use that phrase, the urgency of now. Every damn minute counts. And one of the things about the medical profession, they're incredible, the sacrifices they make. But you know, when President Nixon set up the war on cancer, and he deserves great credit, but at the time he declared war, we had no army. We had no weapons. We didn't even know there was more than a single cancer. We knew that it had occurred in different parts of the body, but we didn't know. And all the gigantic and immense breakthroughs that have occurred since then. But that's all changed. But what hasn't changed is we had a model. The model in 1971 was basically Jonas Salk in a laboratory, a single man or woman coming up with the silver bullet. That's not the way it works. All these years later, 40-some years later, we realized it's all about collaboration. We now have so darn many tools. You know, we can do, as the military guys around this table know, we can do 1,000,000 billion calculations per second right now. 1,000,000 billion calculations. Before the next administration ends, we'll be able to do 1 billion calculations per second. If we could aggregate all the human genome and all the sequencing in one place, 5 million of them in one place, we'd find patterns and developments that would take the human mind decades to get through. And so the problem is we still have institutions that are designed on the model of Jonas Salk, including the way we distribute funding, including the way we do everything. But it's changing. It's beginning to change. And I said to Jon and Stephanie inside, I plan on staying engaged in this moonshot, and we're going to need help to continue this because we're finally beginning to make some enormous progress. And, our goal is to do in the next 5 years what would take 10 years to do. In the process, we're going to save a whole hell of a lot of lives. But the stories we're going to hear about today, say to the press, point out how important this mission is. Because we're talking about environment exposures that are faced by active duty first responders as well as the military, and figuring out how to analyze, how they're analyzed, and how these environmental exposures are minimized or eliminated. And we owe that to you. You know, given our current capabilities, delays in diagnosing cancer is simply unacceptable, especially when we're diagnosing people who are living and serving in dangerous parts of the world. You know, and we have to do a better job assuring that our soldiers, as well as our first responders, are given the best care. And we all know the earlier the detection, the more likely the turning it into a chronic disease or curing it. And look, what you knew, Jon, that these men and women were exposed to at 9/11, and everybody tried to deny. The military, there's a book out called Burn Pits. I'm going to be all over you guys. No, I'm going to be all over you like a blanket. Because I come out of the Vietnam era, and I tried for 12 years to deal with acid rain. With yellow Agent Orange. And we knew that a lot of the guys that I grew up with and fought there were suffering badly, but we couldn't prove it. And the military and the government's instinct always is, prove it. You can't prove it, you're not covered. Well, we changed that. We changed that, and I'm proud to say, introduced the bill in the Senate saying, if you were exposed, you now get coverage, whether or not you can prove it. Just like now, as a consequence of that lessons we learned in my generation, now that anyone is in a combat zone where there's severe concussion, if they have traumatic brain injury, it's assumed that it was caused by that exposure. Well, read it, Burn Pits. I don't know the science for certain, but you guys are in the process of finding out whether or not there are thousands upon thousands of people. I was stunned when I picked it up and was sent to me. This is not my copy. And I opened it up, and maybe they did it to get attention, but I was going down the chapters, and there's a chapter, Major Biden. They followed exactly where my son was stationed, from Balad to Camp Liberty, and pointed out the major burn pits he was exposed to. where there are literally sometimes as many as 25 tons a day of toxic garbage and carcinogens burned. Just like, John, you couldn't prove that each of these guys who had cancer or came down with a respiratory disease was because of exactly what happened in 9/11. The presumption was that it was because there's overwhelming circumstantial evidence that it is, and it's being proven now. Guys, I'm going to be the biggest pain in your neck as long as I live until we figure out about these burn pits, what matters. Because I don't know how we can say that it's critically important that we look at what we did, and I strongly support it relative to 9/11 and other exposures to firefighters around the country, and not look at the exposure of our military. It's not about my son. It's about so many people. And so, look, one of the things that we're able to do now in this task force is talk about how there's really no alternatives to deal with what you all are worried about. Right now, at the Department of Defense, the largest hospital in the world is the VA. But if you're diagnosed with cancer now at Walter Reed, you can immediately get your tumor, your cancer genome sequenced. And because of the work we've done and because of great outfits like IBM, we're going through this. Greg Simon, the guy who's heading the task force for me here, all of a sudden we get a call. You want to use Watson? Well, Watson has read every single damn piece of literature ever written about cancer. Now you diagnose that human genome, you plug it into Watson, you can find out every single therapy that was ever used on that particular cancer genome. They're the kinds of breakthroughs we're making. Microsoft has said that they're going to make available all the space in the cloud for the aggregation of all this data. There's so many exciting things happening here. And let me conclude by talking about how do we not only care for those who, particularly our first responders here, we're going to talk about that, and our military, but how do we prevent cancers? And we all know one is change in lifestyle, the other is environmental exposure and determining what is the cause in the environment. A third way is just new technologies. Right now, we already have a vaccine that can prevent cervical cancer. It took a lot of hard work and research. An injection your child can get when they're young. I dream of the day when your kids are going to go in to get your grandkids get their vaccinations, where they're going to get shots that literally prevent their ability to contract certain cancers. It's already able to be done with cervical cancer right now. But the other thing is that there's a lot of things that we're working on and we're going to continue to work on, both the private sector and publicly, that relate to early detection, like blood biopsies. John, the military has more aggregation of blood samples than any place in the world. But what now we're finding out is you can find markers in the blood that are going to tell you whether or not you're going to eventually contract cancer. Colon cancer takes years, decades to develop, but you can find a marker in the blood now. If we're able to identify that just by a blood test, you're going to start to have the first colonoscopy when you're 18, not 48, and you're going to live a long life because you're going to be able to prevent it. So there's all this work going on, including new imagery, new kind of screening capabilities, new exposures that are relative to the science and technology available today. So God willing, we're going to know 10 years from now another massive fire occurs and toxins are in the air and carcinogens. We're going to be able to determine how you have to go in, what you have to be dressed like, how you're equipped, etc. So I'm always referred to here in the White House, since I've been here, as the White House optimist. Hell, I've been here longer than all of them, but I am more optimistic about the prospects we have of curing and maybe even more importantly, preventing cancers, whether it's in the environment or as a consequence of genetic makeup, than I ever have been before. But with that, why don't I hush up and turn this over? Who am I turning over to, John or you?
Me first.
To you, Greg.
Press,
Okay.
we're gonna go. Thank you.
Press leave first.
The reason you leave, he used a lot of profanity. That's a joke. That was a joke.
Yeah,
I saw him.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.